Good evening. We're going to call the meeting to order. It's 6:02. Would you like to take attendance?
Sure. Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Pasqua.
Here.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Here.
Councilmember Scopely.
Here.
Scopely, and Vice President Verducci.
Here. All right. If we all want to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And one quick announcement for evacuation purposes, the exits are located on that wall. First item on the agenda tonight is approval of meeting minutes from prior meetings. Some of us were not here for those meeting minutes. So just a quick word from our solicitor on who should maybe be voting on which minutes.
I apologize for the cough. So my general advice is if you didn't sit through the meeting, some of you were not sworn in at that time. I would not vote for minutes that I wasn't in the room for a part of the meeting. So you can abstain on those. My only question is whether or not you'll have a quorum of the council for purposes of voting for those minutes. If that's not the case, then I would recommend that you put the meeting minutes over to the next meeting of the council. Just a thought. So if we do the quick math, you sat 5 in November, 2 of whom did not come back, and 2 of whom were there are not here tonight. So
I have a motion at table.
yeah, if I may.
I second the motion.
Just postpone it. Tabling's a whole different story. Postpone it to the next meeting.
Make a motion to postpone minutes.
Second that motion.
I'm gonna do a roll call.
Do a vote?
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley.
Yes.
Vice President Verducci.
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
All right, next up is public hearing on docketed items only. We're going to ask that if there's anybody in the room who would like to come up and speak, now is your opportunity. Please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Anyone in the room? Right, Cody, how about on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand if you'd like to make public comment. Going once. No hands. All right.
We have to close the hearing, make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing. Public times.
Public hearings.
Okay. Okay. All right, next, I'll entertain a motion to see if we can take the agenda out of order.
Make that motion.
Second that motion. It's not a bomb, it's me. My insulin pump. I'm sorry, guys.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley.
Yes.
Vice President Verducci.
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, next, I'd like to see if we can have a motion to call for executive session.
I make the motion. Second.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
If I may, Mr. President, it should be noted that the executive session is listed on the agenda and pertains to prospective litigation matters pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A2. And that's prospective litigation to be initiated against the town.
Thank you. We're now in executive session. Back, I will entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? Take a vote.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Also like to announce there were no votes taken in executive session. And now I will entertain a vote to be taken to seal the minutes of executive session. Need a motion?
Make a motion. Second.
Discussion? Roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, we are back on page 3 of the agenda. And we are gonna open up public hearing. Can I have a motion for that?
Make a motion, open up public hearing. Second.
Discussion? Roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, I'd like to invite anybody from the public to speak on our first matter, ordinance 2024-05. Going once, going twice. All right. Anybody on Zoom? Are your hands raised? Do we have anybody, Cody? Thank you. All right, discussion from members.
Mr. Vice President, if I may, I just wanted to kind of summarize how we got to this point. So last council asked for me to do an update to impact fees. So I conducted this study, which I sent to the whole council this week. Basically, we're looking to increase the impact fee from $58.54 to $68.78. The big difference in that is that back in 2020, when the previous impact fee study was done, they did not really account for the sewer upgrades that are needed over the next 5 years, just 5 to 7 years for the town. So including that was the reason that the impact fee was increased, is being proposed to be increased to $68.78. And I also provided the council, they wanted some comparisons as to what some other cities and towns do. So I did provide that. South Kingston's is about 4408, Smithfield 6573, Johnson doesn't have it, North Kingston doesn't have it, Middletown's 5972. So it varies. Some municipalities don't have a capital budget. So if you don't have a capital budget, then you don't have impact fees. So that's kind of how we got to this place currently.
Yeah. Mr. Vice President, so the ordinance was redrafted back in November to include the amounts that Mr. Parrillo spoke of, and an analysis compliant with the general laws was done by the planning department to support those numbers. One additional change was made that changes from lines 182 through 186, which permits as it's written anyway, and this was written with the advice of the former 5 members of the council. So really, this can be amended tonight by you folks. It would not be a substantive change, since the substantive change to the ordinance is the addition of this number 7 here. And essentially, it allows the town to forgive the imposition of impact fees on low and moderate income housing. The way that this is written says that impact fees shall not be imposed on low and moderate income housing units, and only be imposed on those units deemed to be affordable under the act, that would be exempt from the requirements of the ordinance. All other low to moderate income housing projects would be subject to impact fees. So, for example, federal law provides, and Rhode Island law recognizes, that when you're developing affordable and low and moderate income housing, that the local government, state or municipal, can provide a subsidy. That's what the federal law says, it's what the state law says, to the developer. Municipalities do not provide a direct subsidy in the form of cash. What generally is provided is some form of tax stabilization relative to those developments that are a mix of affordable and low and moderate income housing with traditional housing. And municipalities will oftentimes forgive impact fees. So this was drafted around the thoughts of the prior council. This group has had a chance to look at that, I hope. And so this provides for a local subsidy relative to low and moderate income housing units as defined in the section of the general laws. And it only applies to those housing units deemed to be affordable within the meaning of the act. So it does not exempt other units in a development that would be of a different character. So you can look at this and decide what you want to do, but it was thought by the other council that this was the subsidy that they wanted to make available to reach the low to moderate income housing number. Now, the law in Rhode Island requires municipalities to provide for a certain quotient of its housing stock within the municipality to meet certain minimum thresholds as to housing stock that is low to moderate and affordable housing. Very few municipalities in the state actually meet that threshold number. That is a number that's measured by Housing Works Rhode Island. They do a study every year on this. That's really the authoritative source for that. As I sit here, I know that we're under our 10% number, but what number we're at escapes me at the moment. So about 6%, we've got a ways to go. And the state mandates for steps in the direction of compliance by the municipality have changed, as you know, with 2 legislative sessions ago in the General Assembly. And we've implemented changes along those lines during this past year in Coventry in 2024 relative to compliance with state law as it pertains to those threshold numbers. So it's another tool in your bag on the local level to provide what is allowed by federal and state law with a subsidy, if you will, for this type of housing. So that's how we got here. And, you've had your public hearing. This will be in line for a vote when you close the public hearing on this.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close. I second.
Discussion? I had go one question. I was interested in the piece we looked at. Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
So one question I had as it relates to, it's line 172 on mine, under item 7, impact fees shall not be imposed. Is that's more limiting than if we had that language changed to may? Would that give us the opportunity to be able to change things as we may see fit based on that actual situation? Something I want to throw out there.
Yeah, I believe shall means we can't really. May gives us the option.
What do you think?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. Legalese is shall or may be the correct word. Solicitor.
Well, shall not be imposed is a prohibition against the imposition of the impact fee.
So my understanding would be that if we change that to may, we at least have the opportunity to, if that's something the council's interested in amending.
I would support that change.
I'll support it.
All right, a motion to, sorry, Councilwoman
I
Capone.
have another question about impact fees. Mr. Town Manager, Mr. Town Manager, I see that there was a listing of where these fees will go to over the next 5 years for the capital, key capital needs. Just reading it, I was wondering, would it make sense to put more money into the sewer upgrades? If we have better sewer upgrades, we have the potential of, maybe getting some businesses into this town if we have better sewer upgrades.
I believe that is broken down by formula in the charter. What category, how much, the percentage of the impact.
Oh,
fee
that's
goes
from the
towards.
charter?
Yes, that's kind of set.
When that charter was written, did we have these issues with sewers? Can we relook at that?
The council could look at to change that, sure.
Yeah, you have to have a charter review to change the charter. You can't do that tonight. The only thing you can do is pass this ordinance. The imposition of the fees and the breakdown of the fees is driven formulaic. You don't have a way to change that formula tonight.
Thank you.
Set on that? All set, okay. And that's the case, then I will entertain a motion to amend line 172 from shall not to may. Or may not. May or may not.
Make that motion.
What's the motion? Is the motion is to delete shall not and to add what, may or may not?
I'm saying may. To give us-
I just want to be clear.
I would suggest may. Could you clarify your motion, Councilman?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, we'll change, we'll strike shall and replace it with may. So it will be impact fees may not be imposed. So it gives us the option to do so if we choose to.
I
So-
second that.
Shall not and may not It's a not.
Okay, get rid of not. Okay, all right, get rid of shall not
May.
and replace it with may.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
And now we would take a vote on passage altogether. I will entertain a motion to pass as amended this resolution 24-5.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes,
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
it was easy. All right, next item on the agenda, licenses. You'll see item A, new application for private detective license. It looks like this item is going to need to be continued. We did not publish the name that would be pending here. Do we
That's accurate.
need a motion to
Nope.
do all that? Okay.
Just put on the next agenda.
If you could please, Joanne. Item letter B, renewal of firearms licenses. We have 4 before us now.
Under the Open Meetings Act, the topic was listed, but you were not. So the public did not have adequate notice as to who the applicant was. That was missed by the town. 2 weeks. I have a meeting in 2 weeks. What's the next meeting, Joanne?
28.
Be here on the 28th at 6 o'clock. You'll be on the agenda. Joanne will know.
Okay, we can call you and verify you on the agenda. Yep, sure. Sorry about that. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for understanding. Next item here is renewal of firearms licenses. And let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. Ask the town manager if we've had any input from the chief or any of the department heads on any potential issues.
No concerns from the PD or planning. They are all 4 are ready for approval.
Thank you. I'll now entertain a motion to vote on these as a block.
Make that motion.
Second.
Discussion on that?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, I'll now entertain a motion to approve the renewal.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Hearing none?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley.
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Next item is the election or appointment of town officials. 2 items under here. First item is the appointment of our tree warden. We have Craig Marcotte, and I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Hearing none?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yep.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
and Vice President Verducci, 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Thank you. Next item here is the appointment of the chair and vice chair of the Municipal Fire Commission. Just to remind everybody, we are There are two members who could potentially be appointed to each, chair and vice chair. We have our president as well as Councilman LeBlanc, who are on the commissions themselves. I will be asking for a motion to appoint. Once we appoint the president, I'm sorry, the chairperson, by default, the other person will be the vice.
Make a motion to appoint Council President Lima to chairperson, Municipal Fire Commission.
I second that motion to appoint President Lima as chair.
Any discussion on that? Please take a roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Next up, we have our report of the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I will be quick. I sent everyone an update on the ARPA funds. So as of 12/31, we expended approximately 7.9 million. That left approximately $2.5 million to be carried over for the next 2 years in the form of MOUs between myself and each of the town directors per the pandemic recovery office at the state. So we currently have 22 MOUs in place, 22 different categories of funding that we're going to be spending that $2.5 million on over the next 2 years. Take any questions, Councilwoman?
I do.
And the listing of where all the money's going,
Yep.
there were 2 listings for IT upgrades with different amounts.
Yes, the Cody had some money that was appropriated by the council earlier on last year, and then most recently we did the larger upgrade for the cybersecurity. So I just kept those 2 separate because that's how they were listed originally.
Could we get a list, being new on the council, of where the previous money was spent?
Yes, definitely, I can provide that.
Thank you.
One quick one for you. Knowing that the deadline is passed for obligation, I just want to triple check. We've got everything obligated by, none of this is up for recapture as far as.
No, as long as we spend the remaining 2.5 million by December 31st of 26, we are good.
Gotcha.
The next topic I have is the discussion on creating and funding a new position. So last council, there was some discussion about making some upgrades to the finance department. So we have brought in Mr. Strom, who is a contractor. He's in 1 day a week, former finance director that the council approved. We also just hired a new payroll clerk. We've upgraded the position from what it was. The gentleman we hired actually has an accounting degree. So it was a big upgrade from what we had prior to. And there was discussion that the council wanted to add either controller or purchasing agent to help out in finance. So I have advertised. I have about 26 applications right now. I got about 4 or 5 really good people. My concern is, obviously, this is an unfunded position. So we would have to find money to fund it now. And I want to make sure that this council is going to support this position come July 1. Because obviously I am looking at a lot of people from other municipalities, and I don't want to bring someone aboard at the chance that we're not being able to fund it come July 1st. With the school deficit, Johnson's Pond, Dam 176, roads, new garbage trucks, there's going to be a lot on this budget to have to be funded. So before I interview and take someone aboard, I just kind of want to get some feedback from the council as to whether you see that this is a position we should hire now, or maybe wait until July 1st to make sure it's 100% included in the budget. I just kind of want to get some feedback on that before we move forward.
Might be helpful if we just explain a little bit of how that position is operating now. I know some different departments do.
Sure. So right now, we have no purchasing agent. Each director kind of handles their own bids. So they go out they create their own bids with the help of the solicitor to an IFB. They either use the MPA or they'll get some competing bids. each director manages their own grants, manages their own purchases, obviously overseen by the finance director. This job would be a dual role, so it would be for purchasing agent and grants manager. We probably have about $9 to $10 million in grant management going on right now between the annex, the high school sewer project, the police department, and planning. We probably got about $10 million in grant money right now, which requires quarterly, if not monthly reporting, which right now is all on the finance director. So can we definitely use the position? Absolutely. Right now I have it funded at $75,000. Well, funded, we're offering it at $75,000 plus benefits. So you're talking around $100,000 is going to be the commitment for the position. So we can definitely utilize it. But again, it's balancing needs. And how much is that need a requirement right now? So I'm just going to want to throw it out there.
So this person was already here.
No, there's a new position.
Oh, it's a new
We're
position.
creating a new position.
Okay. I thought you had a grant, somebody that helped out with grants.
Lisa Mendoza gets us the grants, but we manage the grants. We have to manage and do
Okay.
all the financial reports.
Understood.
Yeah, Bob does that.
Question for you. Does Bob do that, or I thought you said the directors do the
Directors do the purchasing,
Okay.
overseen by Bob. All the grant management right now is done by Bob.
Okay, so if the police get a grant and they have industry-specific information that they've got to deal with FEMA or whatever, Bob does that, or? it's not
Bob
like-
oversees it. The police does their own grants. Bob oversees it. Yeah, this person would have a more in-depth grasp of what each department is doing with their grants.
Is there a financial benefit at the moment to the town seeing a saving somewhere by having this person, by relieving duties somewhere, or?
It'll take some time off Bob's plate. That's the main goal of filling this position.
I would support it and support it going forward. I think currently the finance director has a lot on his plate, and to take a little bit off it and look at where we're going to be going here in the future, obviously, I think it's a position that the town really needs.
Great.
I would support it too. I think that somebody has to allocate for this and put it into their budget, correct?
It'll be part of the finance budget that we're going to add. So
It'll be
adding-
the finance
adding-
budget?
Adding 100,000 to the finance budget for the July 1st budget
Okay.
for this one position.
Will that person that's here, the contractor, still be here as well?
The grant writer will be. The
No.
1 day a week person won't be. No.
Won't be?
No.
Okay.
No.
How much do you pay him?
$50 per hour. He's here 7 hours a week.
Okay.
So we're not taking a vote on this tonight, but it's just something to consider, maybe restructuring otherwise, perhaps it's a deputy financial position and they can take that and other things off. I'd be interested in just kind of seeing the volume we're doing on the RFP side. Certainly, I think we get a much better bang for our buck when we, go competitively. It's not always good to use the state MPA, although it's quick. But some of those, it would be nice to have somebody who could focus on procurement. We need to obviously save every buck we can. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the functions of the department now. Perhaps it's even maybe a higher level position that also does this and other things. So I'm open to the idea. I think it makes a lot of sense. We need to professionalize this, and it's such a specific role that it's tough to kind of throw that on people as they're trying to manage a department. It can get pretty sticky out there. So
Yeah, we definitely, like you said, if it's on the MPA, we can utilize it. We jump right to the MPA just for timing purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, to go out to bid, you're talking sometimes 2 to 3 months.
Right.
So we usually use the MPA just to grab what we need to grab, to already kind of vet it and kind of go from there.
What would you need? Oh, sorry. What would you need to continue to fill this position soon? Like 30,000 somewhere? Is that where?
Yeah, so probably we get a fine 4 month salary or so. Yeah, I'm sure we could find it now. Again, I'm more concerned about kind of long term as we talk about further things later on tonight and what the responsibilities are and what we have on our plates.
You get support from me.
Yep, great, thanks.
How did you determine 75,000?
I use the municipal schedule of employees for purchasing agents. There's only probably maybe about 10 or so in the entire state that were on the list. So
Okay.
I just kind of took the number based on our size and so forth, and between 72 and 75 seems to be the right number. Yeah.
If the council is going to create this position and fund it before the end of this fiscal year, you'll need to first create the position. You'll need to approve the job description and authorize the expenditure of money so long as it can be found within this budget, just to follow budgeting regulations.
I can provide all that at the next meeting, the job description, and then we'll find out where we can find that money and present it to the council. The other item I had on there was the biannual communication. So the last referendum was passed that town manager and or council in unison, I'm assuming, would provide the residents with an update every 6 months on kind of what's going on in the town. So in talking to leadership, we kind of want to get something out as quick as we could just to kind of start this momentum going. So they just asked me to put together the dates for the town meetings, the school committee meetings, the budget meetings, and the municipal fire commission as a start, as a draft. And then to bring back to you tonight for discussion as to what other things the council would like to see on that. So that's what you have in your packet now.
Well, we spoke a little bit earlier before the meeting started. If you're going to be sending the dates out of meetings and such, you're using a platform to reach all of our residents that we don't usually do often. So I would definitely use that opportunity to engage and encourage and educate on other things going on within the town to our residents.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. If there's certain topics the council wants me to expand upon, I can. Right now, we're still trying to figure out how we're going to get the information out. Obviously, we can put it on the website. We can put it in public buildings and so forth. But we really haven't, we don't have a perfect medium to get it out to every single resident. So it's basically, we use Facebook and our website and so forth, but we'll utilize that medium, but we can definitely expand upon what you want me to provide, or if the council has something they want me to add to it, we can do that.
I'd also like to volunteer my time to help you with that and write some segments of that like I did prior.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
Everybody gets a tax bill. Throw it in the tax bill.
We could, yeah, we could do it for this round of, yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Just funded the other position. Postage.
All right, I'll follow up on that for sure. And then the last update I have is regarding audits. I'll defer to the Director of Finance to update on where we are with that.
So as far as the audits, the 2023 audit, we did receive an updated draft. At this stage, we have submitted the MTP to the state. So the school's working on their MTP, town's working on the MTP. That goes to the state so that they can review that document, and then that gets inserted in with the audited financial statement. So later this week, I'll be working on the management discussion and analysis section of the audit, which is the first few pages of the audited financial statement. So and we're hoping we get a quick turnaround from the state. They already provided some feedback on the school's MTP. So hopefully we can get that, submitted, get that finalized over the next week or so. And we're hoping that for the meeting on January 28th that we can talk to the auditors and see if they can present the financial statements at that point, subject to, which would come in a final draft version, which my recommendation would be the council would either approve or not approve, but hopefully the council would approve the draft financial statement at that point, and then we would issue the final audited financial statement. At which point they'll also be jumping into the 2024 audit, which again, we'd like to get that issued hopefully in a timely fashion so that we can go out to the bond, for the school bonding. But in the meantime, as soon as we get the 23 audit financial statements finalized, we can go back to Moody's and resubmit to get the rating reestablished.
You might have just said, I might have missed it. 24 needs to be done before Moody's rating?
Now, my understanding, Moody's, we can move forward with the 23. So once we have 23, we will need to give them an internal financial statement on where we think 24 finished, but we can move forward, file some additional documents, have that rating reestablished. It would be bond issuance. We think before we can go for final bond issuance, we will need the 24 finalized.
And just for everyone watching and everyone here, as far as the general timeline of that goes, as far as reinstating the rating, is that days, months, weeks, or any sense on that? About a month. Yeah. That is it for your report. Thank you, sir. All right, next item on the agenda, report of town officers and officials. Tonight we have a discussion of the new school deficit. We have Superintendent Don Cowart and School Finance Director DeVerna here as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me and inviting myself and Chris and leadership from the school committee to be a part of this meeting and discuss the school deficit with the town council and the community. We've been trying very hard on our side to move through this audit process, and every time something is discovered, to be quick and transparent in notifying people, not only elected officials, but the community on and the Auditor General and Municipal Finance Office on things that are brought to our attention. For historical context, because I know some people weren't on the council when this first began, when Chris DeVerna became the finance director in July of 23, he started going through some of our financials, and he found a shortfall of unaudited financials from 22. And then we were able to kind of fill some potential shortfalls in 23. And then we were obviously planning for 24. That was identified by Chris, brought to me. It was self-reported by us to then the school committee, to the town, and then to municipal finance. And then we were quick to put in a number of measures, which included a freeze to our budget. And then eventually we ended up with a deficit reduction plan, which was part of our budget. And we have a certain amount allocated out of the budget that goes right to deficit reduction. I give that context because, we want to make sure that people understand that, when we find these things, we're bringing them forward. So fast forward a little bit, 22 audit just finished in September. Every report that we've given prior to that was on unaudited financials. Basically, we were looking at our books, looking at what we were finding based on the financial information Chris was going through when he wasn't director, and then reporting out. But when you go through the audit process, that's when you really have to get down to the most granular level. And that's when you work with the auditors, and we work with the town, and we discover things. And so that's when we began to communicate to the community about this potential accumulated deficit of about $5 million, because what we discovered is not only did we have a shortfall in 22, but we also discovered that there were some shortfalls in number 3 in regards to some accounts, the special fund accounts that were sitting outside of the general ledger. And those special fund accounts were dedicated accounts for certain types of expenses, some of them COVID related, but the funding to go with those expenses never made it into those accounts. So they were essentially underfunded. And that was for 23. And then we had some issues in 24 with payroll, and 22 was finished in September. We're just now finishing 23 as we just had the report about 23 hopefully being done. Now we're on the MTP part and we're getting ready to start with 24. The reason why I bring this up is because I've had a few different individuals on the council, on the school committee, in the community saying, you know, why does this number keep changing? Why do we not know what this number is? And why is this deficit, you know, going up, going down, going up, going down? And the reality is, and I'm not an accountant, and I'll let Chris speak to that part of it next, but the reality is all of the communication we've done in terms of transparency to be in front of this has been based on our financial, our own internal financials, but not necessarily based on audited financials. Now that the audited financials are coming in, we're making adjustments in accordance to the things that are discovered in part of that audit process. So as we're finishing up 23, Chris was looking at another account that was sitting outside of the general ledger. It was in a QuickBooks account. It had to do with retirees. And what we discovered is that account was continuously underfunded for many years. And because of the due to from payment process that was set up, it wasn't getting picked up the way that it should have been picked up. And so once we saw that that was there, we decided that was another account that needed to be scooped into 23 so that it would sit with our 23 general fund, general ledger fund. And so the letter that you received, which is the same letter that the school committee and the Auditor General and Municipal Finance received, was basically us communicating that out to the community that, you know, there were some funds that we believed needed to be pulled in. You know, we're in a situation where we have an enormous deficit that we need to get our head around. And what we want to make sure we do is, as ugly as it is to make sure we've pulled in every single thing that's out there that does not seem to be going the way it should have been going historically, so that once we get this ship heading in the right direction and we get ahead of coming up with a deficit reduction plan, that we then begin to attack it so that we can start on like a level playing field and start on level ground, so that we're not always chasing some fund or some shortfall in a fund that we were not aware of. So I'm going to let Chris come up and answer your questions. And then, you know, obviously, if there's anything else you want from me, I will absolutely provide additional support to that. So I'll bring up Chris DeVerna, Director of Finance for the school department.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, without recapping everything, just for historical context, when we first communicated, it was around about September, I believe, of 2023, when we were looking at the 22 results and some preliminary 23 and some potential prior period adjustments that you know, had to go into the previous year. And so we first discovered you know, some things that needed to be communicated to the Auditor General and to the council and school committee about an accumulated deficit. And when we last communicated to the Auditor General, that was in early September of this year. That was based on, at that point, we had not issued, finalized the fiscal year 22 financials. They were getting close, but we were going through that process. And then we were working on unaudited numbers for 23. We were, you know, had begun some of the initial on-site field work, but we hadn't had a draft yet from the auditors for fiscal year 23. And then, of course, 24 was still unaudited and preliminary. But we had communicated in early September to the Auditor General of an accumulated deficit that we anticipated through fiscal year 24 of over 5 million. It was 5,058,000 and change. So closer to 5.1 million. You know, subsequent over the last few months, what has happened is we've had the 22 financials were issued later in September. We've moved through the fiscal year 23 audit, and we've had now two drafts given. One was in later October, and then the latest draft on December 19th was provided to us. And in the process of going through the fiscal year 23 audit, there's some work with the auditor, some audit findings, and some consolidations of, other funds deficits that we brought into the general fund. 22 also had prior period adjustments of just over $1 million that pertain to 20, the beginning balances. So basically going back to fiscal year 21 or before. And then we have gone through more of the closing process for 24 and taken some of the audit findings from 23 and applied them to 24. So we're not going to wait till that audit. We've made those same, what was discovered in 23, we've corrected with adjustments to 23, but gone ahead and looked at 24 and made adjustments that were needed there. So that's where we get ourselves to the most recent update that was dated beginning of January 6th. And that's, how we have come from the, about 5.1 to what we're at, 5. We're estimating it's 5,798,000 at this point. And so you probably all have the letter that was provided trying to summarize sort of what's transpired between then and now. I'm not going to reread the letter, but I'm happy to elaborate or answer any questions on anything that you may have.
Questions?
How did we get here? How did this happen over all these years to develop a deficit of over $5 million? It's just behooving that could happen. And where was the fiscal oversight? How many people were looking at this? I know we've gone through some finance directors and stuff, but this is not a small number, Chris. This is huge and a big impact on the community. So how did we get here?
So there's probably a lot of answers to that question, a lot of things that contributed. I think going back in time, one of the most important things is getting caught up on all these audits, right? Because you're until audits are finalized, you're going to be having these moving targets. So that's been a real point of emphasis of trying to get caught up on multiple years of past due audits, which is, when you have transition both on the town side, the school side, and other things, those audits got kicked. They weren't meeting their due dates, and that's why 21 was late. 22 was just issued in September. The turnaround time is getting shorter, which is, and I think we're getting more stability both on the town side and on the school side. But when you do have transition, you have certain things like COVID, you have, I know when hearing about some of the challenges they had a ransomware attack. They switched to a whole new accounting software, which is, an undertaking on its own, which, the timing of that probably couldn't be worse with coinciding right with the start of COVID and everybody being remote. You've had turnover in, finance directors. We've had a couple since then, a controller turned over, and and similarly, there's been turnover on the town side. I think COVID funds also complicated things as well, because with turnover and the ability to really control those funds, I think some things were designated to be spent several times over, really, is ultimately what we found. There were certain things that were supposed to be funded by COVID, were intended to be funded by COVID funds for some capital needs, but they were also designated elsewhere. So ultimately, the revenue doesn't come twice. The expenditures were there, but you didn't have the revenue twice, and I think that complicated things. I think stability is very important, and a little bit of continuity there, and getting working through these financial statements to really get to a good solid number. So we've moved through 22 being issued. We're on the verge of 23 being issued, and I think we have a better handle. The time frame will be shortened for 24, and that we've addressed a lot of the things that have come out of the last few audits already. one of the things I know Mr. Savetti had noticed when we were going through the financials last time is there were a lot of funds besides the general fund. There's a lot of focus on our general fund. That's the main fund that you're looking at when we're doing our budgeting and stuff. But there were balances in other funds that had rolled forward with deficits, and those are on the latter pages of the financial statements. Really, they shouldn't just continue to roll forward. So there's been a lot of consolidation of okay, if they ended up in deficits, they had accumulated deficits from prior years, let's consolidate them and eliminate them with the general fund. So that grows the overall accumulated deficit. If you were just looking at the general fund, the deficit wouldn't have been so large, but when you start consolidating in prior other funds and deficits that were in those funds or continued in those funds, that contributed to growing the deficit. There were prior period adjustments when we looked at some of the way that some of the calculations were being done for the accrual. So just in the 22 financials, when we looked at how the accrual calculations have been performed, they were missing, most notably, it was an under accrued pension expense. So that on paper created over $1 million prior period adjustment that gets added to our accumulated deficit. And then the superintendent had referred to a retiree benefit account. I think that account was problematic in the transition from our old Phoenix software, where that accounting software went out of business, and they went to a new software, Keystone, for both the school and the town. When you transition over, I think there was a level of different things that were priorities on what was going to be transitioned over. But I know that fund caused some challenges on how they would handle billing retirees and crediting them for stipends that go against their premiums. So there was a decision prior to maintain that fund in QuickBooks. So not our main accounting software, which caused, when we looked at this with the auditors and their findings, that created a problem when that fund is it's not getting pulled into our reports in a real-time basis. It was something that would have to come down to the audit. They would look at the balances, and then they would have to make adjustments to fund the difference, because that fund inherently, it works similar to our food service fund, where it was always going to run a deficit. What we contractually are charging for their premiums is less than what we end up paying, because we provide some stipends. So there's always going to be a loss. That loss should get recognized earlier and not come down to the audit. So we've made changes to basically eliminate that, consolidated into our general fund, and we uncovered that what was the way the transactions were intended to work with these due to, due froms, these offsetting due to, due froms, somewhere along the line it got missed, and that's why some of the expense for that fund was not reflecting in the accounting records. It was basically, it was sitting up on the balance sheet instead of going to your income statement. And so that was one of the notable differences between the first draft of fiscal year 23 and the second draft, when we determined that there was a imbalance in some of those, some of those due to, due froms. We realized that the transactions were not processing the way they were intended to do. So we've had to switch that. So now all of them are, they'll, in any of our reports, they're hitting our general fund. They're going right to the expense line. So there's more of a real-time awareness of what the impact of those retiree benefits are, as opposed to waiting until you're doing your audit and you're trying to wrap up the audits and make those year-end adjustments. So I think that's there were a lot of factors that contributed. Yep.
Whether it's as finance directors, whether it's unaudited or audited, I get there'll be adjustments. That's fair to say, but we're approaching $6 million. That is unbelievable. That's a huge number. I get small adjustments, they happen, but Quite honestly, somebody dropped the ball, or previous people have dropped the ball, and financial oversight over there has been lacking in a lot of places. And now the town and the school department, we got a big problem on our hand. And it's, personally, it's a big number, and, and where we're gonna go from here.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
You said so many things in your statement. It sounds like from you and the previous person that did this, that I found out wasn't even an accountant. It seemed like a mishmash of everything. It was not your budget process is not streamlined. How can anyone with a budget the size that you guys get every year not have a streamlined process to be able to hold checks and balances at any time, any day, and not wait until the end of year when it's all crazy? Checks and balances have to be put in place so you can catch a problem before it happens. According to what Councilor Brown just said, this is a huge, huge deal. And right now, with all the almost $6 million, I'd really like to see, what does that equate to? What is that? What's that big hole from? And it's not from COVID, and it's not from people. This whole world had COVID, and not many people have the deficit that the Coventry School Department has. We also had to work. We also had to maintain our jobs, and especially a budget that size. There are issues that come into place, and we have to have the procedures to help rectify that stuff before a hole of $6 million comes up. Do you know where that $6 million, how it got there specifically? Line items? I know you said something about this fund that was found, but that's a little bit of that $6 million.
The answer is it's not one thing, and it's also
It's-
not 1 year. This is, it's accumulated deficit, so it has accumulated over years.
The council does not know what really was the cause of that money. Where did it go? Why do we have a deficit? Are you, as you're going through it now, are you guys putting some processes in place so this never, ever, ever happens again?
So we've worked to strengthen our department. Like I said, since 2021, there's been, I'm the third finance director since then. There was stability for a period of time. I want to say maybe 5 to 7 years where you had, both a finance director and a controller. But when you have an operation, I guess, the size of our school, and people are out because of during COVID, transitioning between software, and then there's vacancies in those positions. It makes it very hard for anybody to come in. The previous finance director came in and he was by himself, where the office used to have 3 college-educated people with a finance director, a controller, and a staff accountant. So it's very challenging to do, and you can make progress, but it's hard to fix everything all at once. I would refer, I did try to summarize a little bit on how things have changed here, but the prior communication from last September sort of breaks down, where the, how we basically started eliminating the fund balance that the school had, in 2021, and that, those prior period adjustments I talked about when we looked at the accrual calculations and some other things with the auditors that applied to prior years. It basically took the 2021 fund balance and pretty much eliminated it. And that was without the consolidation of all those other funds, the other funds that aren't always looked at with the general fund. When you consolidated that, you ended up in accumulated deficits. And then you add current year deficits on that, in 22, 23, 24, that deficit grows. But certainly we're looking, when I took over last year, I was by myself for a while. We worked hard to try to get another person in, and we are very happy. We found, Ming Yu. He comes to us from Pawtucket. He's an accountant, and he's got a school background, and he's very good. And so we've really been trying to have stability. We have had a new clerk that now is in her second year. So we've been working to, strengthen our office and find these things. We try to correct. We're trying to correct them. We looked at the budget we inherited last year, which was what John Cowart had mentioned. There were issues with the salaries, the salary and benefit budget last year. We're under budgeted. It missed certain components that were not easily available through our accounting software. We had to basically do a self-audit of how that budget was put together. We identified that certain components of pay were missing, different increments were missing, and we had to figure out how to bring them in and then design new reports that were going to enable us for this year to have more accurate budgets for each of the personnel. Another thing that we've done is we've tried to strengthen our relationship with our colleagues on the town side and work together. We are very receptive to that. We meet regularly. It's not always great to be the bearer of bad news. We're trying to really identify what the problem is that's accumulated over time. And then we're trying to get through these audits and be able to address it and work with the town to correct it.
The other thing is, I just wanted to make sure we answered the question clearly in terms of like systems, in terms of making sure this doesn't happen again, because it is appalling and the outrage is justified. We should not be running a deficit any year, right? We should be breaking even, or maybe even having some sort of fund balance that can help us transition from one year into the next. And I'm not going to stand up here and blame other people. I'm just going to say that we've identified a number of system level issues, not just only in the accounting office, but also throughout the school department, of things that were not handled in a way that allowed us to catch some of these problems. So what we did is we basically redid our entire budgetary process and also our system of checks and balances that carries throughout the entire year, month to month. We have an accountability process that we've built in that goes all the way to the principal level, because they oversee a budget at the building level. And in terms of looking at their lines, looking at what's been spent, if something's being overspent, immediately identifying what it is, and then identifying where a transfer can happen to cover an over expenditure to a line, and to make the adjustments in real time. So, to your point, Councilwoman Capaldi, we're not looking at deficits at the end of a school year and saying, oh my goodness, how did this happen? We want to make sure we're catching these things in real time and addressing them in real time. So we've put a ton of systems in place. We have budgetary meetings, at least monthly, if not every other week. Now that we're in a budget season, it's every single day, to make sure we are on top of this. The other thing we did is we went through our budget line by line by line and identified so many places where the way things were budgeted, and we're looking at multiple years. So we're looking at 22 budget, a 23 budget, a 24, a 25, and we're looking at percentage of increases from one year to the next in terms of how that budget is set up. And what we found is historically there would be an approved budget for 22. The expense from 22 would exceed what the approved budget was for 22, but then in 23, that line was budgeted the exact same way as it was budgeted in 22, even though the expense was higher than what was initially allocated. And so we weren't taking opportunities to reflect on where, and I say we, I mean the school department, not just Chris and I, but we're the faces of the school department right now. We weren't looking at our financials in a way where we were constantly trying to find ways to identify shortfalls and then budget appropriately for the next year so that that shortfall didn't continue to happen in a particular place. And then if there were places where money was not being spent, reallocate those funds to a different place so that we can find a way to address things early on. So there's a lot of things we've tried to put in place. I think we've been successful in terms of 25, between our monthly reports, our quarterly reports, and every single thing that we're doing, we're right on target in terms of where we were going. But the reality is, last year I said we were on target too, and then we entered the end of the year, we had a shortfall. So I don't want to be the kind of person who's disingenuous in those comments, but we are working really hard. I basically said to people in the school department, our reputation, our professional reputation throughout the community and the state is on the line. We have to find a way to address these systematic issues so that they don't continue forward. Ultimately, we're going to have to deal with this deficit. It's not going to go away. We're going to have to deal with it. It's going to take multiple years to deal with it. But my hope and goal is by building out a system that works better than the prior system, this will never happen in the community again. And so I just want you to know that I can't promise you anything. I can just say to you that the intention here is to never be in this place ever again.
To hear that, thank you very much. Those are substantial things that you're putting into place now that will protect the future. So let me ask you, are you guys thinking about an action plan on
Yeah.
how?
We're required to have, by law, we're required to have a deficit reduction plan. When we met as a large group, when I say a large group, we had the solicitor there, our attorney was there, it was our school committee leadership, the council leadership, Chris and I, manager, finance director, and a number of people throughout the state. And when we had that meeting that day, we talked about, and I actually think Councilman Pasco brought it up, we need to know where the rock bottom is so we can come up with a deficit reduction plan that addresses rock bottom. So we're at that point now where we're finding that number. But by law, we're required to come up with a deficit reduction plan together, approve it on the school committee side, the town council side, and put it into our budget. So going forward, we can pay towards bringing this down. We're required to do so. We just haven't done it yet because our audits were so backed up. It's hard to know what that number is until you go through this auditing process. And shame on the people who were in position that didn't do audits in a timely fashion in 22 or for 23. Because the fact that we're doing 24 now is what we should have been doing 3 months ago. We should have been doing 24 3 months ago. And 24 should be in the books so that when we're budgeting for 25, we're working on solid audited financials. But we're doing 24 in real time. At the same time, we're trying to budget for 25. Well, if you think about how that thinking goes, we built budgets in 23 without having 22 audits, and we built budgets in 24 without having 23 audits. So when as a community, whether it's school or town, you build a budget without having audited financials, you are putting yourself in a predicament where you're going to run into a problem, and we ran into a huge problem. So we're required by law to address that issue.
You good? Councilman Pasqua.
Superintendent, operationally, what measures have you put in place to save money immediately? I mean, we recognized deficit months ago.
Yeah.
And what are you doing tomorrow?
So right away, we put a spending freeze in. We did a spending freeze last year. We did a spending freeze this year. And so, which means nothing gets spent out of the district other than things that are contractual, legally mandated requirements. Nothing gets spent out of the district without Chris or my approval. Nothing. You want to buy an extra pencil, he or I have to approve it. And so that puts a lot of accountability and responsibility to us, but also lets everyone in the school department know. And it was noted to them in a memo to the whole department that we are in a spending freeze. We've cut our budget substantially, and it's a very tight budget for 25, the year we're in now. That does make me nervous because when you're working with a tight budget, one little thing goes south, you're in the jackpot again, right? One student in an out-of-district placement can cost $100,000. That's not counting transportation. One student in an out-of-district placement. We don't have $100,000 to play in our 25 budget. So we are doing everything we can to stay within our budget, but we also are trying to be really, really cautious and careful so that we don't end up in a situation because we're so tight that we're going over. The other thing we did, which is different than the approaches that were taken probably in previous years is we also are trying to capitalize on opportunities to increase revenue, right? We're always focusing on cutting expenses, but where are there opportunities for revenue? So we just renovated the high school auditorium. So there's got, I mean, anybody's been in there would, I think, agree it looks fantastic compared to what it used to look. New seats, new carpeting, refinished stage. The lighting and the sound is not done yet. That's next on the list. But the reality is we've rented that space twice as much as we've rented it prior to it being done. We have increased our Medicaid reimbursement. So Medicaid is something that the school department can get reimbursed for certain kinds of services for certain kinds of students. It's typically medical in nature. The Medicaid laws changed so you can get more funding. But what happened was we were so focused, and I say we, like I said, the school department was so focused on expenses, we weren't looking at revenue. Last year, Chris and I were like, we need to also increase revenue. Like that's the only way we're going to outpace the expense. So we put a ton of extra effort into building a system that works for Medicaid reimbursement. So we're running ahead of reimbursement now. We've already collected 60% of the Medicaid revenue that we projected for the whole year, which means we're ahead. We're outpacing what we thought we were going to collect, which is a $200,000 increase of what was budgeted in the past. We looked at communities like us, same size, same demographic, and some of them are collecting $800,000 a year in revenue from Medicaid. We were at like 400 and change because we didn't have good systems in place. And so you're leaving money on the table when you don't submit those reimbursements. So we worked with the company that helps us manage those reimbursements, and we're already outpacing that. So between the rentals and other revenues like Medicaid, we're trying to look at both sides of the balance sheet, cut the expenses, but raise the revenue. The other thing I was going to say, and you know, we have a large union, 2 unions. We have a number of employees. In this particular year of our 3-year contract, our teachers get a 3.25% increase. But if you look at our salary line only went up by just under 1%. So even though our increase to their pay is 3.25%, on our salary budget, it's a 1%, which means we've made enough cuts and enough adjustments to absorb a lot of that increase so that our salary is only going up, that salary line is only went up by 1%. So we eliminated a ton of positions. If, you know, to respond to the question, we cut a ton of positions. We also reallocated how we use teacher assistants. We used to have 3-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour, 6-hour people. We cut the positions down by almost half and made them all 6- and 7-hour positions so that we have them for the full day. It ruffled a lot of feathers, but it gives us a little bit more streamlined approach and ability to work in a way that's different than how we've done in the past and probably a lot more efficient and a little bit more affordable. So I can go on and on. I don't want to take all your time. Every question's important. But I just want you to know that this is not taken lightly by anybody on our side of the street.
Councilman Copley.
As these audits roll in, I have a funny feeling that this number is going to keep increasing. I don't know where it's going to end at, but I can say for the town side that we're at a breaking point on our end too. And I don't know how much we're going to be able to help you guys, if at all. The school really has to get its ducks in a row and figure this out. You know, there's a lot of taxpayers out there who see this and it's not good. And I hope you guys can figure this out eventually and come up with a solid number for us, because right now it's a moving target and that's not anything we want to see on our side that we can help you out with. It's got to be that solid number and we don't know when it's going to happen. So
I think that's a fair assessment. What I will say is Chris was not in his position. I wasn't in my position for a lot of the 22-23 audit information. So it's a hard process for the finance department to go through that audit. We were here for 24. So it's our financials in the sense of like he was in the office, I was in my job. So the things that we're going through now are now things that we were part of. And so it's less of a wild goose chase of trying to find things, because now we're in a position where we're finally caught up. And I'm sure you guys must feel the same way. Now that the town is actually working on financials that are related to work that they've been part of, that audit process should go quicker and it should go smoother with less hiccups because we're now in a period of time where we were actually in our positions and aware of how the finances were set up at that time.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate you coming in. We hear your passion. We understand. On our side, we've got new people. Your side, both school committee and obviously the administration, new people. You know, we certainly want to make sure we keep that spirit of cooperation. However, as you said, tough to do that. We've had some moving targets. You know, I'm obviously new myself, so just for the benefit of people here, anybody watching at home, just to kind of run through magnitudes, you know, rough order of magnitude, 68, 70% of the town budget is with the schools. December 17th, we had a meeting where we presented a number. Since then, that's grown by about $1 million on top of the already existing deficit. Just to give everybody an idea, it's about a 20% increase. Clearly, as you've stated and we've observed, improper controls have been in place. Tough to have any confidence in the numbers. The numbers are still moving. We cannot, just so everybody else knows, we do not manage the budget. There are state requirements, state laws in place, you know, specifically the maintenance of effort requirement. And there's a lot of things that go into that. So, you know, a lot of times people will say, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. Well, there are reasons for the stuff. You stated quite passionately all the things you're working on. So we understand that on our side. You know, some of the members here have been here longer. They've been through this process before. They've seen things grow, as well as the concern with the budget deficit. So, you know, we just want to all get on the same page as a council, obviously as a body, hearing what you've said and where we want to go next. So we're taking the agenda out of order. So we are moving to item 11. We're just going to discuss briefly a statement, if you wouldn't mind passing.
Can I just add one last thing
Yeah,
before
sure.
you move? Just a quick analogy and then a statement, then I'll sit down and stop talking. So, you know, in that movie Apollo 13, they were planning on putting people on the moon and then they had to reverse it and they had this gigantic problem and they were trying to figure it out. We're in a situation where we're working through the problem. I often think of that movie because they were presented with something that they had never experienced before, and it was quick to panic and quick to say, you know, who's to blame for this? But the reality is the responsibility of the people in the seats at those times was to get those people home, right? To make a situation that was awful into a relative success. And so I'm not saying this is the same thing, but what I'm saying is I have a situation here that I believe is not a good situation. It's downright awful. But what we're going to try to do to our best of ability is a similar approach of taking a situation that is could be considered a failure and making it into a success by finding a way to get through the problem and to standardize how we do things so that we don't have to continue to do this. I have no input or say or oversight in terms of how the council does their business. I just know that we're always available. We're willing to come to meetings. We're willing to answer questions. We're not hiding from anything. We have, and I'm glad you brought up cooperation. Chris brought it up earlier. We meet with the town officials every other week or more often, depending on what we need. We talk and text on a regular basis. Every single document that we send out, we go past each other to give opportunity for feedback. And I know you're going to look at making some sort of statement potentially as a town council, which is well within your purview. But I would just say that I am very much in favor of showing our community a level of cooperation, and that if it's at all possible, knowing that we're going to be coming up to a deficit reduction plan, that we always try to communicate to the residents of Coventry that, you know, we're one community working together to solve this really big problem. And it's not like a school department versus town thing, because I think for our community, that's getting and has gotten very old. So thank you for the opportunity. Thanks.
Got one question.
Two.
Based on an almost $6 million deficit, do you anticipate this year a potential cash flow issue or payroll issue within the school department?
Yeah, so when you run a tight budget the way we do, there's always a potential cash flow issue. And so we work really closely with the town to make sure that their distribution, which is the local aid, comes in a way so we can always cover all our bills. We get our state aid, Sometimes the state aid comes in a regular way, and the transition from, the state to the town account to us is very smooth, and we always stay on top of things. We haven't been in a position where we're not making our bills, but I'm not going to say it hasn't been tight. We're like any family that's struggling, right? We're trying to find ways to find solutions to problem, and keeping an eye on cash flow is very important. So we're not at that point yet, but we're working on staying ahead of it. I know there's no confidence in a community that can't pay people, right? And so that's not, something we ever want to have.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. So we're just gonna give the council members a couple minutes to look this over. We just really want to get to, a consensus here just to make sure we're all on the same page. Feel free to edit away and discuss. So while you all are reading, just in the interest of transparency, this is something I'd come up with, just trying to get some thoughts together here. Since everyone's watching in here, I'll read it while you guys continue to read. If you have edits, something you want to do, scratch it out. We can edit it on the fly, get this over. So Coventry Town Council was recently notified by the town manager that the Coventry Public Schools projected deficit had grown from 4.7 million to 5.8. This is an alarming 7-figure increase. This is outlined in a letter from the school department's finance director, and it's attributed to the 23 audit and 24 closing process. This included consolidating prior fund deficits and correcting the recording of retiree benefit fund expense transactions in the accounting system. Town Council is deeply concerned about the persistent and escalating nature of this deficit. This issue highlights a troubling pattern of financial mismanagement and lack of control over the financial reporting processes within the schools, and this dates back to before the COVID-19 pandemic. The council is particularly alarmed by the school department's inability to provide timely, complete, and accurate financial information, and this has been a recurring problem over multiple years. This has led to a complete breakdown in the council's ability to trust the financial information provided by Coventry Public Schools. The council's role is limited to appropriating funds for the school department. It does not have the authority to manage or oversee how these funds are spent. Because of that, the council must rely on the school department for accurate, timely, and trustworthy information. At this most recent financial misstatement shows the town council and the residents they represent are not receiving the data required to allocate proper funding for other town services and infrastructure. This ongoing financial instability within the schools undermines the overall fiscal health of the entire town, due to the fact that the school's budget accounts for more than 2/3 of the town's overall budget. The council has worked diligently to ensure responsible budgeting, strategic investments, and to build cumulative surpluses for the town, particularly over the last 2 years, and it is disheartening to see these efforts threatened by the school department's fiscal mismanagement. To address this critical issue, the Coventry Town Council emphasizes the need for the school committee to acknowledge and rectify the significant management deficiencies within its administration. It is imperative that the school committee takes immediate and decisive action to hold its leadership accountable for the ongoing managerial and financial reporting failures. The town council is committed to collaborating with the school committee to find a sustainable solution to the financial crisis. However, the primary responsibility for operation and fiscal management, including oversight of administrative staff and the effective use of funds from various sources, rests squarely with the Coventry School Committee. The town council calls on the school committee to demonstrate leadership and accountability in resolving this issue with the future stability of both the school department and the entire town in mind. The council is ready to support the committee in taking the necessary steps to ensure a stable and transparent financial future for Coventry Public Schools. If there's anything council members like to add, edit, delete, we can talk about it now. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to be clear that prior to this update to the Auditor General, the school's last communication of a projected accumulated deficit through the years through fiscal year 24 was $5,058,156 and change, not the 4.7. I will speak to that a little bit. I think that where the 4.7 came from was looking at the initial draft of that was provided late October for fiscal year 23. That retiree benefit fund had what appeared to be a surplus, which a fair assumption it could presume to reduce the overall deficit, but we hadn't worked that through with the auditors yet. What on that draft looked like a surplus was incomplete. It didn't have all the expense there. So it was actually that fund runs a deficit every year. So it really wasn't going to be the 4.7. It was, what we had the last communication of that 5,058,156.
I'll give you credit for the transparency on that one. Thank you.
And I would add
Appreciate it.
one other thing. Since the last meeting, the joint meeting, we have also moved forward with authorizing the town to have keystone access into our so that we had transparent.
We have
showing
that
of
on the agenda.
financial-
We'll be talking. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Councilman Pasqua.
I just want to go on a record and say that the last notification of the council was 4.7, not that 5. So really this reads accurate because of that. We had the joint meeting, and I think at the joint meeting, it was like high 4.7, maybe 4.8 with the Auditor General, but the 5 numbers are first I'm hearing. I've understood 4.8 up until 5.8.
Okay. All right, we'll make the edits to make sure it's accurate as far as what we received before we send it. Thank you all for that. Appreciate it. I know it's a little different, but thank you.
I think we're missing the message that's in this statement. 4.5, 4.7, 5.2, 5.8. It's not that, it's the mismanagement and lack of oversight from the school department and its budget. That's the intent of this message, correct?
Correct. Yeah. We just want to basically let, town, everyone know, here's what we're limited to. Here's the town's role. School committee's role. We want to participate together, but we have to be very clear of what's happened, reset the clock a little, new people there, new people here, cooperation, but knowing that meaningful, real work needs to be done.
When do they start with their plan? When is it appropriate to start with a plan to see if we can fix this?
I don't want to speak for them, but I'm assuming we know the numbers only been climbing. I would have been working on my corrective action plan already without knowing the final number, just directionally where you heading.
Have you
So-
guys started on your corrective action plan yet?
I think we're off topic.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Sorry.
no, thank you though.
sorry.
It's all right. We're all new. Thank you for your interest. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Next up on the agenda, we have, I'm sorry. We are going to take a vote on the statement that we all concur in general with the caveat that we'll fix the final number if we see something different. Motion to authorize the statement to be released.
Make motion.
Second.
Further discussion?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, we are on to the next item. We have a solicitor update.
So I'm glad the agenda is out of order, because at the end of what I have to say, I'm going to respectfully request that the council move to consider passage of resolution 25-5. So was uploaded to the website, and I had sent you some materials to support the resolution. What was published to you included a mock-up of an affidavit to be signed by the tax collector. So you've seen that, you've seen the resolution. The essential gist of it is that there was a tax sale almost a quarter of a century ago. And nobody bought these two parcels at tax sale, and interest and penalties and things have accrued since then. Statutorily, RIMFAC has not exercised its right to purchase these properties, and so they just sit there. And we have someone in town, Mike Baird, who's stepped forward and said, I'd like to buy these two things, but I sure don't want to pay all the penalties and interest. So the tax collector turned to the solicitor's office and to say, really, how do we do this? And, we've evaluated really three different ways to do this. And this is essentially what's called by statute a low value sale. It's legal. I'm recommending it, so that we can complete the sale of these two properties to this gentleman. He may well, put them in a company that he owns or whatever the case may be. You can see the language, in the affidavit and the resolution to that effect. But, the reality is I'm requesting that, you give my office and other town officials, including the tax collector, the authority to sell these two parcels as indicated, since they've not been redeemed and nobody else wants them, and return them to the tax rolls. What did come to my attention, however, in the course of this is that there may be some fire taxes due on these properties. Now, as you know, painfully so, the fire districts are not a municipal department, so we don't have access to that. Nor do I know for a fact whether or not the taxation authority for the fire district exercised its rights to impose a tax lien or to perfect it on these properties. As I understand it, I don't believe we've seen a tax lien that was made on the properties, but I could stand corrected. So, I would be, recommending that these properties be sold as proposed in the resolution. The tax collector did sign the affidavit that I drafted. So, you've seen the tax history of both of these properties with the imposition of, the penalties and the fees and so forth. So, you know exactly where these numbers come from that are in the resolution and in the affidavit. I didn't know if the council had any questions on that. I know it's a bit unusual, but as we clean up tax rolls and things, you may see a few more of these. We wanted to make sure that we did it right. We don't want to be sued as a town, and I'm confident that this is a perfectly acceptable and legal way to do it. I'm not the chair. I can't acknowledge it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude.
Councilwoman Capaldi.
Thank you. Normally, what happens when there's a lien on properties that, what happened? I mean, 25 years, it's been sitting there doing nothing. What normally happens?
Well, I mean, in certain circumstances, properties go up for tax sale. And they can be sold at tax sale, okay? Which means, for example, the individual who owns these properties, it's stated in the resolution, so it's public knowledge, Mr. Anthony, he has a statutory right of redemption should his properties go for tax sale. So that part of that right of redemption is you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay all the interest and fees and penalties associated with the tax sale, and you get your property back in your name. If an individual is unable to do that or just doesn't want to do that, then whoever buys the property at tax sale, okay, is the party who would pay for the property, pay the taxes, pay the interest, the penalties, and all the other stuff associated with the sale, and now they become the owner of the property. That didn't happen here.
Obviously.
Yeah. And sometimes nobody comes forward to buy them. It happens.
I thought the town would,
Well, I've talked to the town manager. I'm going to take affirmative steps to try to move some of these properties from just sitting there for decades and see if somebody's interested, whether it be on a butter or whomever.
right.
So just to return them back to some useful purpose on the tax rolls. That's why I had indicated when I wrote to you all that you may well see a few more of these. So just return property back to some useful life.
What is the question on the table? You want a motion to approve this resolution?
Yes.
I motion to approve it.
Second.
Any more discussion? I have one quick question. When these do come up, is there an advertisement, public or?
No, there's an advertisement throughout, there are various points along the way where statutory advertisement has to be satisfied. We've satisfied those, but in this particular context, we followed the process according to the law. So, yeah, no, no one's being deprived of their due process right to redeem their property, but understand that at a certain point, a property owner's right to redeem ends, and our obligation to assist them in any fashion ends at that point as well. So,
You ready for a vote?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
thank you.
Yes, it does.
Thank you all very much.
Just, if I may, just so the public's aware, the thing that I had just discussed with Mr. Baird off to the side was the logistics of perfecting the sale and signing a deed and closing on the property. There's nothing else going on. So, thank you.
All right, we are on to next item on the agenda, resolution. We have resolution 25-1. reassessment and revaluation project to Stalis Tax in the amount not to exceed $579,000.
Mr. Vice President, so the town went out to bid for evaluation, a full evaluation that is due Northeast, well, the old Northeast revaluation, now Catalyst Tax, was the only bidder, I believe, submitting.
Correct.
They were the only bidder at 579,000. So we're asking that the town council approve the bid so we can move forward and begin the reevaluation for this year.
Any questions? Questions to the town manager?
Motion to approve resolution 2025-1 as presented.
Second that motion.
There's no more discussion. To the vote?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Resolution 25-2, tax assessor abatement and additions for December through January.
Yes, I believe you have the memo that was provided from the tax assessor, Ms. Martini, showing we're looking for taxes be abated from the 2024 tax roll totaling 11,498.17. And then we also have additions or supplements to the tax roll. The prorated 2024 tax roll, 4,688.39. And a supplemental roll 2024 for 2,509.20. I believe in your packet, you should have the list of what comprises both the abatements as well as the supplementals or the prorated rolls, if you have any questions.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or question? None? We can vote.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Next, resolution 25-3 to allow the town to utilize the COVID format for financial reporting to the Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance. I don't know if you want to say a few words on that? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so based on discussions we've had with Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance, since COVID happened, there's a monthly reporting or quarterly reporting that municipals are required to provide. It's actually was required prior to COVID, a certain format. They basically condensed that format during COVID where it was less information being provided. Basically a couple line items where your projected revenues, your projected expenses. So when speaking with municipal finance in the Auditor General's office, you know, I believe you all received part of the memo that they provided, where they're looking for us to do that reporting on a monthly basis versus quarterly basis. And they wanted it in the format of the MTP, which is the transparency portal. So much more in depth. Currently, we've requested from the state that we be allowed to continue to use the condensed version or the COVID version until we have time to work with Keystone, so our general ledger provider, work with them where we can get a report generated within the system that would convert from the existing system into the format they want. So the state has approved it. Department of Municipal Finance approved it. The Auditor General is fine with it. They just recommended that we have a resolution approved by the council saying that you're okay with us doing that condensed version as well. We're hoping that, you know, our goal in the memo that we replied, or the timeline we provided to the state, would be that we're hoping that July 1, we'd be able to get that information provided from Keystone so that we have that report where we can then provide in the MTP format. So again, we're looking for this approval from the council so that we can provide the reports to the state in that condensed version.
I have a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
I second.
Discussion? Good.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, next item on the agenda, 25-4. This is a resolution to approve the transfer of the care and control of the former Oak Haven School back to the Coventry School Department.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So this resolution kind of clarifies the role of who's going to have care and control and use of the former Oak Haven School. As you know, the town owns all the school buildings. The former Oak Haven School is currently being utilized by the school facilities personnel, along with some other storage areas and some classroom space. So they're pretty much utilizing almost the entire building. So this went in front of the school committee last week. They approved it, and we're asking the council to approve it. Basically, it'll save the town $3,000 or $4,000 in expenses to run the building. Our percentage of it, that'll just get transferred over now to the school, so they'll have full control, custody and control of the school. Not ownership, but care and control of the former Oak Haven School.
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion.
Motion to approve, I'm sorry.
A motion to disapprove.
Okay. We can do one of those.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Yep,
Did I do it right?
you did.
Thank you.
So we would either need a second motion to disapprove or a motion to approve. Okay.
No, I said I motioned to disapprove. So now we need a second for one of them. Can I say why I disapprove?
Not until discussion.
I'll second the motion to reject.
All right, discussion? Yeah, for the record, the first motion to disapprove would be the same as the second to reject. Thank you. Discussion, and go ahead, council.
Yes, the reason why I rejected it or disapproved it was because right now in the situation that the school department is in, here we are putting more money onto your budget and, you know, I don't think you're going to be able to pay it. So until you guys figure out what to rectify that budget, I reject this motion.
That's a rejection of the resolution, just for
Yeah,
clarity.
sorry. Yes.
No, floor is closed. Discussion, Councilman Pasqua.
Yeah, I'm also not in favor of doing this. It's just, we just talked about doing a press release on having an issue with, that's what, I don't want to say trust, but trust, if you would. I don't want to add anything to their plate. I want to keep the town in any bit of control possible of that building. I just don't think this is the right time to make a move like this whatsoever. I just based on all that's happened.
Councilman Brown.
Yes, I concur with Councilwoman Capaldi and Councilmember Pasqua to reject.
Any further discussion? So we are going to vote on rejecting the resolution. So this would be in favor of those rejecting.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
All right, the next item, I believe we took care of earlier on the, or do we still need to pass the resolution on the resolution was passed. Nothing on the ordinances, which will bring us to item number 12. I'm sorry. item number 13. We are public comment for undocketed items. If there's anybody in the room who would like to speak on an undocketed item. All right. So this gentleman first, go ahead. Yeah. Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Bradford Mayor, 360 Hope Furnace Road. I understand it's your right and purview to release that letter you voted on earlier. I think the tone and tenor is just going to promote more divisiveness in the public between town council and school committee. If you're still going to release it, I would politely ask if you discuss it again in the future before it's released, to maybe at least add in all the measures that we're talking about today that we have put in place to keep this from happening again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir. Good evening.
Yeah, hi. Steve Riley, 5 Osprey Drive in Coventry. Quick point of order, Madam Clerk, did you get my email?
I did.
Yep, we were just going to say, the council has received it. We will be submitting it into the record. So, as far as tonight goes, if you have something not in here, you want to make in addition to this, please go ahead and do that.
I would just offer that is based on a lot of unknown information as a resident of the town, as a property owner abutting Johnson's Pond. Before Christmas, Councilman Pascoe tried to bring us all up to date with a couple of notes, one of which was that a redevelopment agency was going to establish a public use for the pond. And looking into that and seeing this Coventry redevelopment agency, apparently there was a meeting that took place, and there was a company that provided a presentation. So personally, I'm operating from a lot of misinformation. All I have to go on right now is the Q&A that took place back in July, and Solicitor Angel's comments, and I believe President President Lima's comments relative to how improvements were going to take place. And at the time, Solicitor Angel indicated that they had a team of professionals. And, in my mind, I heard the cash register going off in terms of billable hours and costs. Manager Parrillo has outlined all the financial concerns that you folks are all going to be entertaining this year. And so obviously Johnson's Pond to me is a complete unknown. A public use determination is a complete unknown right now. And I think putting that responsibility in a redevelopment agency, and I don't have knowledge of what the judge in the condemnation proceeding described as what this public use had to include. So when I heard back in July, beaches and pavilions, and I immediately go to Briar Point and the concerns over that. I consider what it's become is a public nuisance. I can recount some things, but I'm also in the absence of President Lima and District 4 representation in Briar Point. It may be better for me to curtail my remarks until the next meeting. So with that, unless you want me to offer why I'm here tonight and why I think I've provided in the past, at least to the 2024 Town Council, all of my research, which I think is pretty unmistakable that Johnson's Pond was created for public use, for an economic development consideration. And as such, it's my position that the state should have interceded in the sale back in 2020. They didn't. From a musical chair standpoint, the town of Coventry is left looking for the chair when you folks pursued the condemnation.
Or well, before I ask them, just so we can make sure we get this in the record, I'm going to entertain a motion to submit this, the letter from Mr. Riley into the record, if I get a motion for that.
Motion to enter it. Second.
And then any discussion or questions? No, we do not have discussion or questions. I was kidding.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Copley.
Yes.
Vice President Verducci.
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
All right, on undocketed items, please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hannah Dos Reis Kutu, 611 Weaver Hill Road. So I'm also on the school committee, and the only thing that I would ask is, when you want to answer if you want answers to some of your questions, I would highly suggest that you go back to some of our meetings that explicitly explains every single budgetary decision that was made. And I do have to say that at the same time, we have to commend the new school committee and the school administration on the great job that they've really done uncovering all the audits, self-identifying issues that came to light, coming up with a solution, making sure that it's understood what it's going to take to get it better. Because if you don't self-identify, if you don't bring it to the table, what good is that? There's a lot of new people on the council, and I really suggest that just take some time to go back on the agenda, look at the sections of the budget where the discussions were, fast forward to it and listen. And any one of us is always open to communication and giving you answers. I mean, the resolution, I do have to say, it was a little bit harsh, given the multiple conversations in school committee meetings and town council meetings that we've had together. So to me, that was a little bit disheartening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room on docketed items? All right. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to speak on an undocketed item, please raise your hand. You see any? No. All right, hearing none, we'll move along. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I make motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
She did it for the whole meeting.
Thank you.